Hello viewers, welcome back to my channel. My name is Tauya Matope, and today I'm going to be talking to you about completing child and family assessments. Before I go into this topic, I don't want to put a disclaimer to say I don't claim to be a guru in this field of social work, but I just do share some nuggets on this channel in terms of my own learning, my own experiences, and I hope that these videos will help somebody else who is a social worker or who is planning to come into this profession, or anybody else who has got a keen interest in what we do as social workers, right? So the first question I would need to answer is, what is a child and family assessment? So a child and family assessment is a form of an assessment that we use in children's social care for us to have a better understanding of the presenting concerns with regards to a particular child or children. This is done in the context of their home, of their whole family. That's why they are called child and family assessments. Yeah. So it is quite important to take note of the fact that in child and family assessment informs the care planning of what needs to be happening with regards to that particular child, the intervention in regards to how that family or how those parents are supposed to be supported going forward, depending with the presenting concerns of that particular family. So it is possible that whenever a family has got, faces some challenges and they feel that they can actually benefit from social care, they can make a self-referral to social care, or they can, any of the agencies who are working with that particular family can actually make a referral to social care. Right. So with regards to us completing a child and family assessment, it is, I would say it is an excellent fit with the provisions of the Monroe Review of Child Protection, which was done by Monroe, Ellen Monroe. However, I would also need to mention that it also fits with the Working Together to Safeguard Children document, which was reviewed in 2018, and I think there was also another review in 2020 with some few provisions which were put in place. The most important thing to mention about child and family assessment is that these assessments need to be child focused, they need to be child centered, they also need to focus on the strengths and what is working well for that particular family. What is it that professionals or the local authorities worried about that particular child or that particular family? It will also I think I would mention to say a child and family assessment is not a static process. Fine, we can do a child and family assessment today, but sometimes things do change within children and families' lives. So in most local authorities, there's an expectation that if a case has been open for about 6 months, there is need to do another review child and family assessment, mainly because the process of completing a child and family assessment is not a static process. It is not a once-off event. It is a continuing process, so to speak. Right. So with regards to completing child and family assessment, the other question that people might ask would be, what are the timescales that social workers do adhere to when it comes to completing child and family assessment? So with regards to timescales, the standard nationally expected timescales in England and possibly in Wales is 45 days. However, each local authority has got different timescales set by what we call the local safeguarding children's board, or with regards to what the what the local children's safeguarding board would have decided. So you find that in some local authorities it's 35 days, but some local authorities still stick to the 45 days. However, as a manager, one thing I will say is, it depends with what are the concerns or what are the presenting issues. Sometimes as a manager, I can actually decide that this assessment needs to be knocked off in 20 days. And my expectation would be for the social worker to knock off that assessment in 20 days. However, there are some, assessments where issues are complex and there's need to have a wider consultation with not only the professionals, but also extended family. Sometimes people will be outside the country and it might be difficult to get some information. Then we will need to stick to the 45 days. However, in most local authorities that I've worked for, the standard timescales would be between 20 days and 35 days, right? So, however, it's important also as a manager or as a social worker to make sure that there is a review point in 10 days time of making sure that the child has been seen within 5 days of that referral coming through, of that assessment being allocated, and also making sure that some of the agents' checks have already been sent. That needs to be done within 10 days. So I usually want to make sure that there is a 10-day checkpoint to make sure that everything is in check and we are doing what we are supposed to be doing. So it's really important that once you get an allocation for a child and family assessment, you make sure that you progress your agents' checks as soon as possible, because remember, it's about them receiving that email or them receiving those requests and then looking into their details or into their files as well, dig that information, compile the report, and then send it back to you. So if you wait, say for example, after 10 days, it means you're only left with possibly, for argument's sake, maybe 20 days, if that assessment is going to be knocked off in 30 days, or for argument's sake, you're only left with 25 days, if that assessment is going to be knocked off in 35 days. So it's really crucial and really important for you to make sure that once you get an allocation for a child and family assessment, you knock off the agent's checks as soon as possible and you get your consent as soon as possible. Some of the things that you may need to be doing, you need to actually start doing them as soon as possible, including progressing some of the referrals that you think will need to be done, because there are some things which are just obvious that this needs to be done. For example, if there's a concern that you need to do a LADO referral, or if there's an issue that you need to do, maybe a referral to age of care or another specialist team that you know will really bring in support as soon as possible, you don't have to wait until the assessment is done. You can actually start making sure that support is actually put in place as soon as possible. Right. Then we move on to the next question that somebody might ask. What needs to be included in your child and family assessment, right? In terms of answering this question, I would refer you to the assessment triangle that actually summarizes or briefly talks about everything that needs to be included in a child and family assessment. Remember, we're talking about the parenting capacity, we're talking about the child's developmental needs, and there are subtopics within each and of those three sides of the assessment triangle. We're also talking about the history of the family. We're also talking about the environmental and familial factors around that particular child. So you need to be mindful that you need to refer to the framework for the assessment of children in need and their families of 2000. So like I said, you need to explore the child's developmental needs. You need to explore the family and environmental factors. You also need to explore the parenting capacity of those parents. If you do that, you should be assured that you should be able to come up with a robust child and family assessment. And for me, there are some glaring things which you need to take into account, especially if there are identified needs from the beginning. Like I said, you don't need to wait until the end of your child and family assessment to make a referral, for example, to drugs and alcohol support services. If you have had the conversation with the parents in that first visit and they're open, willing to engage with support, then do the referral so that support can actually kick in whilst you are completing your child and family assessment. It's possible. I've signed off some assessments, robust assessments where support has been put in place from the get-go, and by the time the 35 days or the 45 days lapses, they are already engaging with support. They are doing quite well. They're already starting to make some changes with regards to their situation. So in such a situation, it's possible to actually recommend closure, especially if you're sure that they will continue to engage even when the case has been closed. Remember, we don't need to be in these children's lives or in these families' lives forever. We are in to do some work, do that work, and get out of their lives and make sure that they continue to have their lives, right? So I would also need to emphasize to say an assessment will need to be undertaken with parental consent. Remember, if it is Section 17, that's voluntary, you need the consent of the parents. However, if there are safeguarding concerns and you think you would need to enter, to have a strategy meeting and you are within Section 47, that parental consent can actually be done away because there are safeguarding concerns that need to be investigated, whether we have parental consent or we don't have. However, there are some instances where there might be a significant risk to the child, and sometimes seeking that parental consent may not necessarily be, commensurate with what is on the ground at that particular point. Obviously, I've mentioned about entering strategy meeting, and when you have a strategy meeting, if you agree that it meets threshold for Section 47, then you need to progress it that way. We are already in the statutory arena if we are going towards that direction. Right. So if obviously there are safeguarding concerns, like I've said, if we are in statutory arena, then it needs to be done under Section 47 inquiry. It's also good to mention that your child and family assessment needs to be restorative and needs to be strength-based. you need to make sure that you are capitalizing on the strengths which are already on the, that you have already identified with that particular child or with that particular family. If there are good things that they are doing, you need to commend them for those. But however, if there are also things that you think they can actually improve on, it's about pointing out those things that they need to be improving, how they can improve it, and when they should have improved it, to make sure that you are able to articulate all those things with them, and you're actually on the same page with the parents that you are working with. Right. The other important thing is to include information from the other agencies. Remember, I spoke about doing your agents checks from day one to make sure that you have got an up-to-date information about what is going on for that particular child from the school, what is going on for that particular child, either from the school nurse or from the hospital or from the GP or from anybody else that you have been working with that family before. If they are presenting concerns around their mental health or the child's mental health, if you've done your agents checks with CAMS, if you've done your agents checks with the hospital or the GP, if you've done your agents checks with the drug and alcohol support services, which maybe the parents have told you that they've been engaging with, all those kind of things. The other important thing is to make sure that the voice of the child comes out quite clearly in your assessment. You need to evidence that you have done some direct work with the child. You have also consulted even the other siblings in that particular child. Remember, when concerns are raised about one child, you need to also take into account the other children in that particular family. So you will need to also evidence the voice of both parents to that particular child, including the non-resident parent. When I'm talking about the non-resident parent, I'm talking about the parent who is not currently living at home with that particular child, but to an extent, sometimes they may have parental responsibility, or sometimes even if they don't have parental responsibility, the other parent needs to consent for you to be able to have that conversation with them. And if they're having parental responsibility, their voice definitely will need to be heard, and you need to also find out, what are their views with regards to what is happening and what they think needs to be happening. Right, so I know some social workers do only focus on the resident parent, but I think it's equally important to make sure that you have actually consulted with the parent who is not resident with that particular child, especially when that child has got considerable significant contact or they do spend time with that particular parent. And then you also need to be mindful that your assessment needs to be outcome focused with clear analysis and recommendation of what is it that you are recommending. And in terms of the information that we've received, the agent checks that we've done, the conversation that we've had with the parents, the conversation that we've had with the child, what's your analysis of all that information? As a social worker, you should be able to triangulate all that information, make sense of what's happening, and be able to recommend what would be the best possible course of action. And remember, when you are doing your assessment, you don't only go in once and then start to do your assessment. I always recommend the social workers that I work with to say, you need to have seen that child at least 3 times or have had a conversation with those parents at least 2 or 3 times for you to come up with a robust assessment. And during those conversations, already you can tell which direction this assessment is going to be taking. Do you think you're going to be recommending early help? Do you think you're going to be recommending a child in need plan? And you'll be having those conversations with the parents already in terms of the possible outcomes. And remember, if it's early help or if it's going to be child in need, you need the consent of the parents because it's a voluntary plan. So there's no point in you finishing off an assessment and recommending child in need, whereas you haven't had that conversation with the parents about what direction you think the assessment is going to be taking, because it's possible that you might recommend a child in need plan and they will tell you, no, we're not going to engage with that. So you need to have had that conversation with them. And the moment you see that you think it might work, it needs to be worked under a child in need plan and the parents are not giving consent, you need to quickly have a conversation with your manager as to what needs to be happening next. Because remember, there is mileage about having that conversation with the manager for them to decide whether we need to escalate that case to a strategy meeting or not. And when you don't do that, you are just causing more delay to that particular child and to that family. Remember, you also need to be very transparent when working with these families. If you have got concerns, there's no point in them seeing those concerns written up in an assessment rather than you having that conversation with them when you do that visit. So it's really, really, really important to make sure that you are very transparent with the concerns that we have or the concerns shared by the other professionals. And remember, when you're done with your assessment, you need to share it with the family. And depending with the age of the child, you may also need to share a copy with that particular child. And moving on to Right. What are the benefits of a child and family assessment? For me, I think it's quite important because one, it triangulates information from all the other agencies, and will be able to make sense of what is going on, what are the lived experiences of that particular child, and what is going on for those particular parents, and what it is that they can improve. So an assessment will be able to point out all those things, and a robust assessment will also be able to point out what is working well for that particular family, and what it is that they need to improve, or what it is that needs to be happening going forward. And the good thing about an assessment also is usually it does emphasize on, evidencing the voice of the child, so you'll be able to know what exactly this child wants to see happening, what is it that they are concerned about, or what is it that they are worried about their lived experiences living in the care of their parents, or what it is that they think their parents need to do to make sure that their lives could be more comfortable or could be much better. Are there concerns around drug and alcohol use, which the child is really worried about? So an assessment will be able to dig deeper as to the impact of what is happening with the parents on the child, or the impact of what is going on with that particular household. Yes. Um, and then coming on to who should be carrying out a child and family assessment. So a child and family assessment needs to be carried out by a qualified and registered social worker. I think you all know that already. Right. So with regards to that, it's really, really, really important to make sure that social workers do plan their work when it comes to child and family assessment, progress all those things that needs to be done from day one, especially the agents checks, getting your consent, put your ducks in a row to make sure that by the time you finish the assessment, you actually come up with a good and robust assessment. Right. With those few nuggets, I hope some of you have actually benefited. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please subscribe, share this video, so that many people will be able to actually get these few nuggets that I share with you. If you haven't, click that notification bell, subscribe, click that notification bell, hit that like button, so that whenever I post again, you'll be the first to be notified and you'll be able to share this video. Thank you so much.